Today on the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, we have the most special episode for you. We get to interview Anjali Bhimani, beloved voice actor and actor, as seen in the currently airing series Miss Marvel. All that and more references that we have no control over.
Welcome to the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast. My name is Matthew Carroll.
And I'm Jeff Randall.
And I'm Zuhair Ali.
Well, we have something really special for you guys today. As Jeff mentioned in the intro, we have an interview with Anjali Bhimani, and it's super exciting. We got contacted to have her on, and we were really thankful. First time we've ever had someone from the Marvel Universe coming on the show to be interviewed. That's so cool. So cool.
She has so many credits that you probably have seen or heard. She's the voice of Symmetra in Overwatch. She's the voice of Rampart in the game Apex Legends. She's been on several episodes of Critical Role in Exandria Unlimited. She's had a recurring role in Modern Family as Nina Patel. She's had episodes of Silicon Valley that she was in. She's currently playing Auntie Ruby in the Miss Marvel series. Like, she's and like she just wrote and published or has created and is getting a book out there into the world
with a very successful Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah. So, guys, it's just a lot of fun. And I got to tell you, it's a great conversation. Like, I really thought we'd focus a lot on Miss Marvel, and we do talk a good bit about the show, but like it just turned into a great conversation about creativity and culture and representation and just like the ability to find your power. And like, it's just kind of, it turns into sort of a philosophy of creativity and art. And I love that sort of conversation. So hope you guys really enjoy it. And here it goes.
When I saw the email, like I was in the gym and I saw the email come in on my phone and it was like, do you want a chance to interview Anjali Bhimani? And I'm like, do what now? Hang on, what? So
that makes me feel good. Thank you.
I leapt at that opportunity to like immediately send the email back, like, please, yes.
No formalities whatsoever. Just yes.
Now you're going to make me feel all like blushy. The most important thing, before we even start, I need to know who is whom or who is who. I don't know English.
I am Jeff Randall.
Jeff.
Matthew Carroll.
Matthew, and Zoo is what I see.
Zuhair Ali.
Zuhair Ali?
Zuhair Ali.
Zuhair Ali. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you all. Zuhair.
I put it in the chat so you can actually see it properly.
Yes, no, I know. Once you said it, I'm like, okay, no. But I look, you're like me. My screen name is Sweet Ange with 3 E's because when I was in high school, all my friends called me Sweet Ange. And I was like,
oh, nice.
That's how you spell that. You do it with 3 E's, right?
Yeah.
That's why I have the 5 U's, like 1 U for every letter in my name.
There you go. Perfect.
I like it.
Yep. We've called him Zoo for a long time now. Zoo! All right.
Yeah, see, that's good. And that's also a good way to call people.
Yeah.
Zoo!
Absolutely. So you just get
Absolutely.
a pig call from every corner. Zooey!
Pretty sure whenever I see Zoo in Zoom, he can probably hear me from like outside the headphones because I'm just like, Zoo!
It's a term of endearment. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Hang on. You know what I'm going to do before we continue is I'm going to close the 94 windows that are.
I should probably do the same thing.
Don't make fun of her. Okay.
Only a touch distracted.
It's not even so much distracted as bandwidth.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that time we couldn't do the Zoom interview because I...
We just can't. We've searched everything on our end. Is you sure it's nothing on your end? And Anjali just has like 1,000 windows.
It's not the other apps that are open, or the apps that are open, or the fact that apparently I'm still on my Discord. None of those things.
Hold on, let me close these other games that are running.
No, seriously. Like I ran a watch along on Sunday, and I just noticed that Discord was still open.
Oh, that's great. What were you watching along?
Ms. Marvel.
Of course.
Yeah. One of my very, very sweet fan friends. He started off as a fan and then became a dear friend, and he's a lovely young fellow in the UK. And he started a community server for me. I hate using the word fans because that makes people sound like they're fanatics. It really is a community.
Yeah.
Right? They made a community server for me, and they named it the Bimaniacs.
Nice.
That's great.
So cute. I can't decide whether we should call it the Bimaniacs because Bimani is how you pronounce it, or the Bimaniacs because maniac. But either way, I love it.
Yeah.
It reads great.
It's great.
That's an acceptable mispronunciation.
I feel so too. Yeah, I feel like I can justify that.
Absolutely. That absolutely means you've made it to superstardom if you have a name for your fans like that, you know?
Well, God bless them. I mean, I can't remember who came up with it on Twitter. I'm embarrassed to say I can't remember who did it, but as soon as they did, I was like, "You're my best friend, whoever." How have I gone through this long in my life and not put two and two together about that word?
Right. I felt like that whenever I was watching Critical Role and they mentioned this was super early days of Critical Role and they mentioned critters and I was like, what? How is that?
How did I
miss that?
I don't understand. How do they miss this? Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally get it. Get it. Yeah. I am single-handedly attempting to make the hashtag critters show up to blow up because I tell you, critters show up.
They show up.
They are in the most lovely ways all over the world. Just them they blow my mind with how lovely they are. Just really, really lovely. It's a beautiful community of people that have come together surrounding a beautiful creative source. So it's really, really lovely. I am so incredibly it is not lost on me how lucky I am to be a part of the specific projects that I've been able to be a part of in the last 5-10 years. It is not even remotely lost on me. It's why my entire office is covered with art from all of those things.
Yeah, everything on your IMDb is just a hugely beloved property. It's amazing. Again,
I'm so fortunate. I think it's not just. And I'm sorry, we're jumping right in. Is that okay?
That's fine. Sure.
It's your show.
I was about to ask, but should we say it started officially? Because you said before we started, I was like, this is fine if you're good.
We're going to just dive in.
Among many other things, what has been so extraordinary to me about getting to work on these specific projects that then have these amazing communities over the course of the last, let's say, about 10 years, is that it wasn't until then really that my passion for storytelling, which I call my weapon of choice, and my purpose of wanting to inspire people to find their own unique superpower, if you will. I know that word's thrown around a lot, and obviously in our geek world it's thrown around a lot, but I really do think it's true that every single person has one, if not more, really distinct, unique things about them that only they can provide to the world in their particular way. Mm-hmm. So being able to combine that passion for storytelling with getting other people excited about who they are, those two things came together in such a beautiful way, starting with Overwatch and then blowing up into this whole series of beautiful communities, whether it's the critters around Critical Role, whether it's the Apex community around Apex Legends, the gaming community in general, the cosplay community, and now the global Marvel community. And all of these, what's the greatest thing about it is, since I was a kid, I have been on the other side of that. I started playing D&D when I was 8. All of this stuff. I've loved these properties and these worlds and these mythologies that have been created. I've loved them from the consumption side for so many years. Yeah. And now, finally, the world is seeing the value of those things being more in the mainstream. Mm-hmm. And the people who love them are being celebrated for loving them as well they should.
That's right.
And it's just, it's a beautiful, beautiful time to be able to come back to this world. And it's the wildest of blessings that all my best friends have. For the most part, I get to work with my best friends all the time.
That's amazing.
There was a conversation that I actually had with some of my friends that I grew up sharing the similar sentiment where it's they moved away to sports and stuff like that because it was the cool thing to do in high school, right? Your reputation mattered. But I was still the nerd. I love anime. I love superheroes. Why would I stop watching that? And of course, I got picked on for it. Once I hit 6'3", it was kind of hard to pick on me. But it went to this thing where it's we hit these separate paths and then came back, and people are like, "Man, we were into this all along, and these posers are just getting into it." Now it's yeah, but they're into it.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we're watching this together.
It's such an interesting phenomenon, isn't it? It's anytime, how do I say this? I find it very sad when communities that have historically been have included the outsiders, when those outsiders become exclusive of everybody else out of bitterness for them not liking it in the first place.
Yeah.
Because what that does is it's just a different kind of exclusion, right? And this is all about the world right now. The world is not just representation. The world needs inclusion, inclusivity.
Absolutely.
We need to be telling stories about each other, not because we want one of everything and it's Noah's Ark. It's we want everyone to feel like a part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things that Jeff Kaplan said when Overwatch first came out is the only people we want to exclude from playing this game are people who exclude other people.
That's right.
Yeah,
I like
that's
it.
beautiful.
That's right.
Right? Everything else is fair game. Jump on in.
Well, jumping into Miss Marvel there, we have had a huge reaction from our listenership talking about Miss Marvel, and some of them have been connecting very personally with, the sorts of the cultural aspects of Miss Marvel and how it's this representation they've seen for the first time. But even beyond that, we had an email from a guy last night. He's like, everybody's talking about representation. I'm a 50-year-old white dude, but like this show represents me. Like I feel so connected to Kamala, and I think that's so powerful because Kamala's character, if you see a character that is different from you as a protagonist, it allows you to have that window into them being the lead character and them being someone to be rooted for. And I think it's so powerful.
That is such a beautiful thing to hear, because that is precisely what I have been hoping for before this show came out, was hoping that people would realize this show, yes, it is a giant love letter to the Muslim Pakistani communities, but it really is a love letter to anyone who has been afraid of stepping into their power, to anyone who's felt like they were somehow they didn't fit in or whatever, and that somehow this would make them weirder to step into their power. That fear when you first find your strength, and what does it mean? The responsibility of it, the excitement of it, all of those things. I do genuinely feel like this is a story that speaks to so much more than a particular cultural background or a particular demographic. I think it really does speak to people all over the world. It really has. And as the story progresses, and I'm just eating up on the inside what I know is coming. As the story progresses, there's even more that I think people are going to connect to and identify with and feel for. Because right now, episode 1, we've seen how amazing Iman is. We're all in love with Kamala. She's adorable. She's funny. She's smart. She's witty. And she's still the outsider. So we can kind of like connect with her and bond with her. And there's so much more coming. The family is amazing. I'm so excited.
I think it was one of the things, like when they asked me to come on, like I was very excited because like as an Ismaili Muslim and as a Pakistani, that was like exciting for me to be able to like share like the similarities in this and that. But then like just all the stuff of being a teenage girl that's a nerd that gets easily distracted and all those things. Like I didn't even have to talk to the Pakistani stuff because everything else was just like, there's so much more to relate to. There's so
much, right?
And we're only in episode 1.
Each of the characters, there's so many things you're going to fall. You're going to learn more about these leading characters, obviously, as we go on. And each one of them has an aspect of, just like human beings, each one of them has flaws and each one of them has strengths. And you're going to see all of those at play. I knew how beloved the comics were going in for, obviously. But there was a question, and we all, as does happen anytime you are creating an artistic offering, there's that part of you, whether you, the person, or you, the group of people creating it, that's like, ooh, how are people really going to see what we want to do? Are people going to are we conveying the thing that we want to convey? And when we saw the first 2 episodes at the premiere, I was just like, I was in tears before we were like 30 seconds in, because I just knew, I was like, okay, they got it right.
They nailed it.
We got it right.
I actually felt that way with the Miss Marvel sizzle that came out at the Disney Plus event last year.
Yeah.
Like when one of the producers was talking about how exciting and how happy she was that it was a Pakistani character, and having other writers and producers and people in that room that shared that experience, like I teared up for that, and I was so excited to start. Like, I mean, what was it like in the room, like thinking about stuff like that? Like I heard Iman's interview about talking about the like saying Bismillah before you drive, and like how that was such a like, normal thing, and adding it to the script was like, hope it works out. I was like, that's so cool. Like to be able to live those experiences. Like, what was that like?
It was incredible for a million different reasons. Because here's the other thing. Obviously, one of the things that we and they, I want to say they because the creators were really the ones who led the charge, obviously, wanted to convey is that, yes, this is about a Pakistani Muslim family. There are Muslims of all backgrounds in the world. And just like certain ethnicities, not everybody looks alike, not everybody sounds alike. And through the course of this series, you're going to meet different people who have related but different backgrounds. And that's what life is about, right? We all have a certain undercurrent of humanity that is in all of us.
That's right.
But it's all of those unique things that make each individual them, that make them them. So there's I think what's really one of the really exciting things about this show is that you are going to see people you never thought of, or people are going to see people that they never thought of as, oh yes, of course that person is a Muslim, because that's who they are. On this, that is who that character is. They don't look like I would think or whatever. I think it's going to expand people's mindset and expand people's understanding of what that can be out in the world. Because let's face it, it's very easy for everyone in the world to judge a book by its cover and to assume that everyone who does one thing or another looks like another. But as well, Zuhair, a lot of times a Sikh will be confused for a Muslim, will be confused for a Hindu, will be a Pakistani for an Arabic person. Like there's a lot of blurring the lines. And while, of course, no two brown, like all brown people are not the same, it's also understandable that people would sometimes have to ask, because there's a lot of crossing the streams in the communities, there are Indian Muslims, there are Pakistani Muslims, there are Black Muslims, there are white Muslims, there are people all over the world. Yeah,
you look at the history of like how, I also train Filipino martial arts, and my instructor that I talk to all the time, he's a big history guy as well. And we talk about like how there was Muslim influence on the southern islands because they were part of the empire at one point, and how like their food and their tradition and some of the structures between their weaponry and stuff like that is based off of the different empires. And you think of the history of how it spread through the Silk Route, how they had plenty of parts in Africa and the Mediterranean, how much that influenced Spain and Greece. And I love when people tell me that I pronounce like gyro wrong, because it's like, no, it's pronounced differently on like depending what country you're from. It's different from different places. And so what I am also hoping that this show is that while, yes, it is a love letter to a particular family in a particular story and all that, I do hope it's a little bit like a gateway drug to people to finding out more about other cultures and finding out more about other religions, because they get excited to see it. Yeah. Right. That to me is the ultimate compliment for a creator, is when their creation inspires people to dig deeper into something they didn't know about. Inshallah. Yeah, there.
There are so many times where when we were talking about the episode in our instant reaction cast, where like, a word will have come up and we were like, Zoo, what is beta? Like, what do these words mean? Like, how does this, because like it didn't translate in the closed captions or anything, but like, Zoo, what does beta mean? Like, I want to make sure I'm using it right.
Sure. And that's exciting, right? Because we get to answer those questions. And look, as an Indian, I can tell you straight up, like, there are plenty of times someone asks me something about Indian culture and I have to go, hey, you know what? I don't know. Let me go check it out. And it helps us connect more, it helps us, and also makes it clear to everybody that I can't be entirely your tour guide through this culture. I'm one person.
You mean you don't know everything?
I know. but not just to put, to make a joke of it, but any show, any book, any game, whatever, no one property, no one story can possibly represent an entire culture, an 100%. Entire religion. Oh, yeah. It's not possible, and it shouldn't be possible, because if that were true, we'd be very two-dimensional. But to have a story that is complex and beautiful like this one be one of the ones that's coming out now, that's what I mean about the gateway drug. You have a story doing that. Then there will be another. Then there will be another. Then there will be another. Right. And the more complex stories that we tell, that also are infused with little bits of different cultures, little bits of different religions, and deal with people of different gender orientations, or all of it is going to. I think it's just going to excite people more about learning about the people around them. And that, I mean, if there's anything we need, there's so many things we need in today's world, but really the eagerness and excitement to know each other rather than judge each other is like, that's one of the top ones I think we really need.
Seems like you should tell that to Aunt Ruby. She's been a little judgy so far.
He's complex as well. For a minute.
She's a victim of her own environment.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Like, as soon as you get the title of auntie, like, it's just like starts to change you. There's just a thing. I'm just kidding.
Man, I remember the first time that I met a client and the kid was like, when is the uncle leaving? I'm like, no. I am not an uncle yet. You will call me by John. I still have a few more years. Like, now I have the receding hairline, so it's like, okay, I'll accept it if need be, but I'm not full uncle yet. I refuse to accept it. If it's any
consolation, I don't know when it switched from people online saying, Anjali, will you marry me, to Anjali, will you adopt me? But somewhere in there, I was like, no, go back to the... I like the other one was very flattering. It's very, very flattering. Stop calling me auntie. I'm Didi. I'm not auntie, I'm Didi.
Yes.
Our community is called Pandas, and so people have been calling me Papa Panda sometimes, and sometimes Jeff. And one day somebody called me Granddaddy Panda, and I was like, wait a second, I am 38, okay?
Yep.
Also, I can't be too mad at it because interestingly enough, here in Hollywood, I've had the blessing and the curse of playing people of vastly different ages.
Yeah.
So right before my husband and I got married, I booked a role playing a grandmother on a network show to not so young kids. I mean, they were like, 10 and 12 or something. And I was like, well, baby, you married a GILF. You didn't know. You were getting into this. We skipped over MILF. We went straight to GILF. Let's go.
All right. So we were talking about this before you hopped on. So when your scene came up, I took it as you were Kamala's mom's friend because it was just auntie. Mm-hmm. Because if it were related, then I figured that she would say like hala or something like that. Right. Matt was like, oh, they're sisters because she said aunt. So I was explaining it's like...
I had no idea.
It's a little bit different in South Asian culture. And I think this also translates to a lot of other cultures as well. But auntie is sort of a... catch-all. Auntie and uncle are sort of a catch-all for elder who is respected and a friend.
Zoo made us aware of that.
There's a line in that movie, The Namesake, if you ever saw it, with Kal Penn, where he's talking to his girlfriend at the time, and she's nervous because she's meeting all of these people from his family, and she's like, I don't know their names. And he said, just call them auntie or uncle, you'll be fine.
Yeah,
that's great.
And it sounds funny, but it's also true because it is a term of respect, and it is also... It comes with a set of expectations of a certain behavior that Baijan there and I will hopefully not be doing in our older years.
I love it that I'm getting that just from watching the show, and thankfully having Zoo to help me out understanding that, because we were like, oh, that's your sister. We were talking all about like maybe her mom, maybe because there's a connection to the mom somehow in the story. And we were like, maybe the sister will help her figure it out. And Zoo was like, sister, what do you mean? We're like, oh, we didn't understand. Sorry. Another thing Auntie Ruby taught me, us Gora did not understand. Sorry.
That was amazing. I'm very proud of you right now.
Dude, the fact that she just said, like, did you see he was with the Gora man? I was like, you're not even going to throw subs on for that? Okay.
No.
When Kamala's mom, I forget her name, so I just called her auntie. When auntie was yelling at the driving instructor, just called her a Kamina. I'm like, oh my God.
That's what I said during the watch along. I was like, you guys, you have no idea how real this is. That they would be defending their child, their baby, to the hilt.
My jaw dropped when she called her a Kamina. I was like, oh my God. Like, that's not one of the worst words, but it was enough to make me go, he doesn't even know how much he's being insulted right now.
No, he does not.
Oh, that's awesome.
I do love that they're not translating those in the captions and in the subtitles, because it is making folks ask.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, you want to know, ooh, what does that word mean? You connect more with the learning of the word when you have to actually ask what it means, as opposed to when you see the translation.
Yeah.
You got to do a little bit of work to get the meaning out of it.
Some words just don't have a great translation. They just sound, the onomatopoeia of it, and they're just like, they just sound right.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, and I love, again, there is, because there are so many South Asian languages spoken in India and in Pakistan, and there's so much kind of overlap and similarity between them. It's really cool to see which characters are saying things in which ways as you move forward.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So do you speak anything aside from Hindi?
Well, I speak Spanish and French. Very useful as an Indian. I grew up in America, so I speak Spanish and French. And then I speak a little bit of Hindi and a little bit of Gujarati, and I have a tendency to confuse them a lot because my family spoke Gujarati growing up, but my parents very wisely were like, now we can talk about her without her knowing, so they didn't really teach me. So I learned all of the words that meant me, and then everything else I didn't pay attention to. Hindi I speak obviously in a lot of games and a lot of shows and stuff. I've had to speak Hindi, and I've had to learn a variety of other Indian dialects. I spoke Bengali on Alex Inc.
Oh, yeah.
I've had to learn a variety and work on the dialects as much as possible to be able to play those characters and do it accurately, and respectfully. So, but it's been really fun. I mean, the job of an actor is like a lifelong college experience because you are constantly taking such and such 601. You're constantly taking these advanced courses to be able to step into the world of a particular character. And it's a really lovely thing. It's the greatest education. Your life is just a giant opportunity to learn, an opportunity to dig in, whether to the human condition or to circumstances or to history or to, all sorts of things. So I love it. If you're a voracious reader or learner, it's a great career to be in because you have an excuse to learn everything.
Well, let me ask you, you're stepping into this world now, the MCU. We are huge MCU fans around here, name of the podcast and all. What was your experience with MCU prior? How much did you have to how much 601 of the MCU did you have to take to when you were getting into it? Was it new to you?
Sure. So my original connection to the MCU was the X-Men comics.
Oh, yeah.
Those were my originals. And I just remembered another memory of reading them. I was so connected to the fact that these heroes were also so human and had human flaws.
That's right.
And I loved so much the complexity of the stories that were being told, that each one of them was dealing with not just how to be a superhero, but how to be a person, how to be an other in a world where people judge you for being different, how to control your power and how to use your power for the powers of good. Or, in some cases, they were characters who had the same experience, but it turned them towards the forces of evil, if you will.
Yeah.
It felt very, very true to life. I feel like, our modern day mythology is Marvel and all of these, all of these other modern day mythos that we have been creating. And so what's cool about it is just like the Greek gods and the Norse gods in those actual pantheons, in those actual religions and in those actual mythologies, the heroes and the characters in the MCU and in these and other comic books and other graphic novels and whatever, they are all similarly dealing with challenges and flaws. Absolutely. There's no one perfect being in any one of these comic books and any one of these universes.
It's not DC. It has complexity. Just teasing. That's just for our listeners. We just like to pick on DC sometimes.
Matt, that's something that I would say. That's my line.
I know.
I am Switzerland. The other thing, though, I grew up, and this is a side note, but one of the reasons that Ms. Marvel is so special to me is when I was growing up, the closest thing I had to a superheroine who I could connect with was Wonder Woman. She was the only one out there.
Yeah.
And the only thing we had in common was that we were female and we both had dark hair. That was what we had. But I I just grabbed onto it and ate it up, and I loved it so much and connected with it so much. And so, whatever opinions any of us have about one company or another, or one particular mythos or another, just the fact that they existed when they did and continue to evolve as they do, I think is a really, really special thing.
Absolutely.
Competition just raises the bar.
Absolutely. I love DC. I'm just teasing. I actually thought it was interesting. You're talking about how the modern day mythos and these characters and how complex they are. But it's interesting because DC came first, and their characters are a little more iconic. Isn't the word I'm looking for? But they're a little more like, they're representational of like an idea almost. And the Marvel characters are a lot more, they dig in and they feel human. And I think it's interesting because that's kind of what's happened in our media over the last 50 years anyway, is like the rise of the anti-hero, the sort of just complex heroes and villains, and sort of what makes you make that decision instead of just being like the idea. I
think that's also just a product of the time in which these characters have been created.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the time that Wonder Woman was created, that was the most complex and interesting and powerful depiction of a particular female superhero that we had. Yeah. And then as the world continued to evolve, storytelling began to evolve. And even now, all of those, original iconic characters are becoming more and more, they're being explored. Different sides of them are being explored. Yeah. And again, I think that's just a factor of us recognizing and celebrating and being open to the complexity within all of us as time goes on. Because it's, decades ago it was scary. People weren't sharing all of themselves.
Yeah. That's right.
I don't think. Not that I was there, but it seems like it was a much more difficult time to be unique.
Yeah, and for better or for worse, that's kind of how Iron Man started off, is that the main enemy was, Middle Eastern countries, relevant to the times that we're living in now, and, what we consider threats and what's an issue. And you have these people that kidnap him living in mountains, speaking in Farsi and Urdu and Arabic and all that stuff. And it was relevant to, I think that was the main intrigue of that Iron Man story, was that it was relevant to current times, and it grew on that depending on how our country and how our storytelling and how our experiences evolved within the last 15 years.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even in the MCU, when they're dealing with characters that are going back in time or maybe came up in a different particular period, they are incorporating the history of that time as best as they can, and who were fighting against who or whom. I'm so bad at that, but what we're fighting against each other at the particular time in the world. It's storytelling. Look, storytelling it has to be complex, and it has to have some pitfalls in it. There is a difficulty to doing it accurately in the present when you are talking about a different time. Yeah. And yet still being able to speak to issues that are going on now. It's one of the reasons why I think sci-fi is so powerful too, is because you're dealing with a future that has not been yet. And yet almost always, and this is one of the things I love about sci-fi, almost always sci-fi is dealing with or touching on socio-political or anthropological issues that we are dealing with in our present day. They've just found a way to separate it a little bit in this fantasy universe so we can tolerate hearing it about ourselves.
Yeah. Yep. Just kind of take a step back to see it from outside of our own perspective.
Yep.
Exactly.
And be able to sneak those morals in under the guys,
How dare you sneak morals in on me?
Or just sneak the questions in, even when sometimes, someone doesn't necessarily... If a creative team or an author or whatever doesn't necessarily want to hammer in a particular message, quite often they just give an opportunity to ask the difficult questions and let the audience or the reader decide. Yeah. And that's also a beautiful thing.
Big Star Trek fan here, so I'm on board with that very much. Oh yeah, love it.
One of the things that we've seen with the MCU, that storytelling has gotten more complex, and the better villains that we've seen are always the ones that you can identify with and relate with in a way, especially when it comes to something like Black Panther, how Killmonger had he won the moral argument in the film, and we kind of agree with him, maybe not his methods, but I could see where he could go.
That's precisely it right there, right?
Yep.
The coolest depictions of quote unquote bad guys are people who do not think they are bad guys and have a very clear reason to question that. I mean, I think of Magneto like that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he had absolutely every reason to be pissed off because of his history. And it could have gone either way. And it's just, he could have gone either way as a child. He could have gone either way in terms of how he decided to remedy that pain. And I think that is what we do as humans. We are not a product of our experiences. We're a product of what we do with those experiences.
That's fair.
Some of the deepest, kindest, most beautiful people I know have had the most troubled upbringings or come from countries that are war-torn or difficult childhoods or difficult circumstances. And on the flip side, I know a lot of people who had a relatively blessed and easy upbringing who maybe didn't quite lean into the powers of good in their real life. It can go either way.
Yeah.
So I think that is that sweet spot in modern day mythology is making a case for, wow, I kind of get why he's doing what he's doing. I hate what he's doing, but I kind of get it. I just don't. That doesn't justify it.
Yeah. It's that Daredevil Punisher aspect of like, you're just one bad day away from being me.
Yeah. Are you a vigilante or are you a hero? There's a fine line.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Tap dancing on that line.
Yeah.
So, vigilante or hero, what do we got from Miss Marvel?
I'm not tell you that.
I was hoping we had just kind of like dragged you along.
We're one episode in. I'm not going to spoil anything for you.
Okay.
I mean, you guys see the sweetheart that Kamala is.
Oh, absolutely.
And in this first episode. So I think we can kind of like safely root for her being the hero. That said, what kind of hero is she going to be?
That's always the question.
And a hero to whom?
Oh, yeah.
Who's going to believe in her and who's not?
Yeah, because the quote unquote villains always see themselves as the heroes of their own story.
Yeah, and also like look at all the Spider-Man movies where inevitably there's some jerk in the movie who thinks he's a horrible person, and there's the same thing happened with Batman. Same thing happens with so many different heroes. That the question is, are they actually a force of good, or are they just taking matters into their own hands? That also is an incredible duality that I love that so many superhero franchises deal with. They deal with that beautifully on The Boys on Amazon. They deal with that. They deal with that in the X-Men. They deal with that in all of the Avengers movies and properties. So yeah, I think we'll have to answer that question in our show too at some point.
Little hint there.
But which side does Auntie Ruby fall on? Is she a hero or a vigilante or an antagonist? Because I gotta say, she's kind of seeming antagonistic to me a little bit. She's poking the Kamala Bear there.
That eyebrow.
God, I wish we were talking after a few more episodes.
We can circle back if you want.
She looks ready to go, Ruby Auntie.
I'm going to plead the fifth and let you decide.
Okay.
You can hit me up after the season concludes and tell me what you thought.
We'll circle back.
I'm going to stay on the Anjali Didi side. I don't want to see Ruby Auntie.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That eyebrow that Auntie Ruby shot at Kamala after Kamala was like, she went for it. She had a dream and she went for it. And that eyebrow was like, no.
Yeah,
I love it.
No. Like Auntie Ruby says, what she's going to discover is she doesn't have a ring on her finger. This is a different set of priorities.
Yeah.
I think that's all it is. They're just different priorities here.
That definitely looked like that came from a place of experience, like that character. Yeah. You may have your own Auntie Ruby.
Auntie Ruby to me is an amalgam of a lot of my different aunties.
That's fair.
That's what I told them on the instant reaction. I was like, there's a lot of Pakistani culture that I want to talk about. There's a lot of Pakistani toxicity that I want to talk about. This is kind of part of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not. And again, as you watch as the show continues, I'll be interested. Again, we'll all compare notes after the end of the season.
That sounds great.
I very much, especially you, Zuhair, I'd really like to hear more from you. No, especially because look, I'm not Pakistani. I'm Indian, and I'm playing an Indian Muslim in the show. So I'm always interested to see where our cultures overlap. And if we have done if you feel that we have done honor to that, because I know that was a huge, huge focus through every single thing that we did. There's a reason that we had so many creators on the project, starting with Sana, who, created Ms. Marvel, everybody around who had that experience. And we had experts and consultants on the show. And we had Iman, giving us the this is what it's like for a teenager. So, I may think I remember it, but it just wasn't the same.
I'm trying to control myself a little bit, but you actually hit me in the heart. I'm getting emotional just the fact that you said that and the fact that it means so much.
I'll tell you, and I think this is really important to note too, it's not just the brown creators on the show who really cared about it. This came from the top down. Mm-hmm. Kevin, very much, everybody there at Marvel wanted to do this right and wanted it to be not just respectful, but celebratory. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the honor and respect that they paid doing this, whether every single person thinks it's perfect or not, the respect was paid. And I think that's very, very important to note because, like I said, no one property, no one character, no one story can represent every single person in a particular demographic. Mm-hmm. All that we can ask for is that those stories are told respectfully and with thoughtfulness and with depth. And I think they've really excelled at that. And I felt it on set, and I felt it watching those episodes.
I think my roommate's cutting onions or something. I'm tearing up a little bit.
Onions. Definitely onions.
Definitely onions.
Definitely the onions.
Well, you're talking about people finding their secret, their ability, their power. You wrote a book called I Am Fun Size and So Are You. Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I sure can. Wow, that's what you did, a deep dive. Thank you for asking. So in 2000, there's a little bit of backstory on this. In 2017, when Overwatch had blown up, and I was getting connected more and more with the gaming community again for the first time in many years, and the tabletop community, and every, just the wide artistic community of people that I was introduced to through that game. I was blown away by the generosity that everyone was exhibiting online with their own creations. There was a day in particular when I was like, let me just ask for a fan art Friday and maybe 2 or 3 things will show up. And I asked on a Thursday night and I was like, I'll see something in the morning. And in the morning it was like, boom, 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 boom. People of all different levels of expertise, people just grabbing things and promoting other artists, people throwing stuff up, people posting their cosplay. And I was so blown away by their willingness to give of themselves in that creative way that I was like, okay, you've been wanting to do something for a long time, but you've been letting perfection be the enemy of good and not doing it. Get off your ass and do it. So that night, I had been thinking about for many moons, thinking about doing a blog or a vlog or something, but I wanted it to be about something that meant something to a larger community. And at the time I was like, I'll do it for petite women, but that's very exclusive. Just because I am one doesn't mean that we are, I wanted to include everyone. And then I realized the term fun size for me, as cute as it is for tiny things and candy bars, I feel like we're all fun size. I feel like we were all built for fun. We all are built to live these huge, fun, magnificent lives. But let's face it, life has an uncanny way sometimes of making us feel small. And people can do that. Experiences can do that. We can do that to ourselves in our own mind. And so what I wanted to do was create this web series, this vlog web series thing that would help people by telling them about my experiences with things. So I started up a public email address, Anjali@IamFunsize.com, and I said, send me your questions. Don't ask me things about my characters. You can find that out on the internet. Ask me what you want. These things that you are DMing me, ask these to me now, and I will tell you about my experiences. I'm not a doctor. I only play them on TV, but I can give you opinions. I don't do advice. I do opinions. So people would ask these very penetrating questions and I would share my experiences with them. And it happened to be particularly popular amongst this community. And I got a lot of beautiful feedback from people at conventions and online saying how it changed their lives. And a friend of mine early on, my friend Seti Lopez, had said, you got to write a book, you got to turn this into a book. And finally, last year I did. So I ran a Kickstarter to fund the whole thing and to be able to publish it through my own publishing company, which I have now, Tiny Paws Publishing, and Tiny Paws because my dog.
I was gonna ask. Tiny Paws got to be a pet reference.
Tiny Paws do big things. That's our thing because I have tiny paws too. But So the book is, we ran the Kickstarter. It was very successful, got the book finished. It's beautiful. And I'm announcing here for the first time, we are going to be launching it worldwide at the end of August of this year.
Nice. Oh, congratulations.
For the world, we'll be doing the ebook, the actual paperback, and I'm pointing to it like you can see my room, the paperback and the audiobook, of course, because, obviously I got to do the audiobook.
I don't understand. Do you do voice acting?
Yeah, exactly. I do not do the audiobook, especially the chance to do my dog's voice, because he's in the book too.
That's great.
So that's what the book is about. And really, more than anything, as I was writing it, what I wanted more than anything was this tangible thing that people could have with them to let them know that no matter how unique their journey is, they're not alone. That either there is someone who has experienced the same thing, who can shine a flashlight on you in that cave, or there's someone who's like, I may not understand what you're going through, but I'm here with you. I'm sitting next to you. I'm here with a joke. I'm here with a shoulder. I'm here cheering you on. If you're afraid, I got you. That people, because I feel like it's very, especially with the experiences of the last couple of years with the pandemic, it's very easy to, even in this world of extreme connectivity, it's very easy to feel disconnected. The internet has connected us all in an amazing way, and yet in many ways it's also left us all to feel more and more disconnected. And so my goal is to give people one more stepping stool, one more tool to be able to fight that in their world and know that they're not on their own with this.
Wow.
I love that. I love that message. I believe that's what all art is for, is to show people that your experience.
Amen.
Yeah, it's so show people they're not alone, no matter what the art is about. It's almost always some form of that. I love that.
And to show them also that even though you may not think that you are unique and special, there's only one of you in the world.
Yeah.
And when we create these heroes, and this too, this is part of the reason when I was saying my passion and my purpose coming together with all of these projects. When you see a hero that you identify with in a story, whether it's because of their cultural background, their religion, their sexual orientation, their gender orientation, whatever it is, or just their story, when you see a hero that you identify with and you admire, then you see that hero in yourselves, and you can take that out into the world with that sense of agency and that sense of empowerment. And I think because there are a lot of people who don't have that opportunity, whether because of social anxiety, neurodiversity, whatever it is, that don't have that opportunity to connect as easily, that also, this form of storytelling is another step for them to be able to do that, for them to be able to step just one tiny step beyond their boundaries, and then another tiny one, and then another tiny one, because they got inspired by seeing a hero that they can see in themselves. That's a really cool thing.
Yeah, that's one thing that Matt and I had talked about with Miss Marvel, like not being Muslim or Pakistani or like really having any cultural connection with her. I saw a lot of myself in just her mannerism, in what seemed like ADHD, and I was like, I went undiagnosed for 30 plus years, and like seeing how she just zones out when somebody talks about the future. I'm like, oh my God, they're doing it. They're actually doing it.
And they're doing it in this way that is celebratory.
Yeah.
We understand that everyone around her is saying this is a bad thing, but we're seeing what she's seeing in this art and in these beautiful illustrations. We're like, well, come on, I guess that's kind of cool.
And how much joy that world brings to her.
Yeah, I mean, how much complexity and excitement and imagination that brings to her.
Yeah.
And celebrating that uniqueness in her, even if the world around her wants her to conform. I think that's something that all of us can relate to, because what is the line from Spanglish? Given the choice between being like everyone else and being odd, you got to root for odd.
Yeah.
Got to root for odd.
Got to. Always odd.
Zoo, I think it's my turn for onions to be cutting.
Yeah.
I see it.
Secretly, I'm just chopping onions over here. You can't see, and I'm just like feeding them.
It must be an acting trick. There's just always onions on set.
Yeah.
Menthol.
Oh, menthol. Good tip.
Yeah, don't ever do that to yourself. Don't ever. I've seen that go horribly wrong. I've seen people use the craziest things, and I'm just like, oof, that's going to leave a mark. Yeah. Don't do it.
This podcast listenership knows that I can cry if I need to. They've heard it enough times about almost. It's sad.
Big softy.
I think this whole community is big softies. Like we're
just a bunch of teddy bears over here.
Well, look, if we weren't supposed to feel things and we weren't supposed to feel them big, we wouldn't be able to.
Yeah,
it's true.
They're there for a reason. This is another thing that I love so much about being an actor, and I have my father really to credit with this, because my father was a surgeon, but he wanted to be an actor when he was younger. My parents actually met doing a play in medical school. And my dad, he just felt things really big. Like everything, he would tear up easily. He had a temper. He big, good or bad. He felt it in such a big way, and it sort of gave me this unspoken permission to allow that to come through and not be afraid of it. Because I think it's when we're afraid of our feelings that they either overtake us or they mess with us.
You're so blessed to have had that.
When we think that they are the truth, not something that we are experiencing as a response to something, when we allow ourselves to feel them and move through them, that's just being human. That's just awesome. And so I'm just very lucky that my job allows me to run the gamut of those so that I can get them all out of my system and then sit on TV with my husband on the couch with furry socks.
Well, Anjali, thank you so much for joining us. We have had an absolute blast having you. And honestly, we just wrote questions trying to get information about the next few episodes out of you. But then you were just so wonderful and so good
at pivoting and putting you on other questions, so I didn't have to tell you. Well, yes, you found my evil plan.
Tell Kevin Feige you did good. You didn't.
So she is a villain.
Would you put in a good word for me? Because that'd be awesome.
You put a good word for us. We don't know.
We'll scratch each other's backs.
I do have to say, you guys, this has been a really fun time. I always love talking with people who don't just love superheroes and fantasy fiction and sci-fi because it's fun and exciting, but because there are deeper reasons to care about it. And you guys obviously have a deep and penetrating love for these art forms, as do I, because that's what my life has been about. Little geek Anjali grew up to slightly less little geek Anjali. She's still little. She's just like maybe 3 inches taller.
And it's a hat trick. You made all 3 of us almost cry during this conversation. You did it.
I have a book on dudes that make guys cry. Is that a thing? I don't.
We do. We on this podcast. Thank you again so much. Anything else you want to tell everybody that can find your stuff or anything? Or
I mean, I'm very easy to find on the internet. Please find me on social media. I'm very active there. You can DM me. I'm very easy to find. I also have a public-facing email address, like I said, Anjali@IamFunsize.com, if people have questions that they don't necessarily want to ask out in the public arena on social media. And I'm just very excited to get this book out to the world because, like I said, I really it's a continuation of what Ms. Marvel is doing. Hopefully. It's just in a different format, helping people realize that the very thing that makes you you and unique and quote unquote weird is the very thing that makes you awesome. So
absolutely.
That is absolutely something that the Stranded Panda community especially can get behind.
Yeah, pandas!
Woo! Yep. That's something that we're definitely going to just be dumping links to.
When it's available publicly, we will absolutely let everybody know.
Oh, God bless you for that. Well, and also we're all going to get together after the season is over, right? And we're going to debrief.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We have to.
Absolutely.
We're going to circle back
and have a conversation.
I'm inviting myself back to the show, but yeah.
Honestly, it depends on how mad I am at Auntie Ruby. Like, if I don't know, is she gonna?
That's fair. I'll steal myself. Maybe I'll be talking to 2 of you, not 3 of you. We don't know.
Yeah, I may.
You may hate me. You may love me. I can't tell you. Who knows?
I just don't know if I'll be able to hide my anger. It depends on how
I can separate art from the artist. I'm good. Like, we can do this.
I grew up with aunties. It's fine.
If Auntie Ruby pisses you off that much, then
you've done a good job.
I will get it. I will understand. But really, I'm really excited for the world to have this show. I'm really excited for the world to have Iman. She is so young and so wise beyond her years, and the greatest thing about us having her is that at this young age, we now get to have her for decades to come. Because she's in the public eye so much sooner, and at such a young age. I'm really excited for the world to have her.
Me too.
Yeah, lock her into one of those multi-decade MCU contracts that we've heard so much about.
I have a feeling she wouldn't mind. I think you guys have paid attention to how dope she is and how deep in the MCU lore she is. So.
Oh, yeah. She's like the first thing that I thought of whenever I saw her in an interview. And then also when Kamala came on, it was, she's one of us. Yep. She's one of us, guys.
Yep. She's very much what Kamala represents as well. So thank you.
Yep.
I know we've gone longer than expected. Thank you so much.
For like 3 hours.
Same here.
Same here. Thank you again. Thank you so much. Thank you for opening your community to me.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you
so much for being with us.
Thank you. Bye, John.
Thank you for joining us for the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast, available everywhere you get podcasts, and now a video version streaming live on twitch.tv/strandedpandatv and available at youtube.com/strandedpanda. And if you'd like to learn more about all of our other podcasts, geeky projects, and ways to support the network, visit strandedpanda.com.